my basic approach to pitching is about the kind of pitching you have to do when you're trying to persuade somebody to read your script or read your manuscript, when you have a very short time to persuade them. So you might meet them at a writer's conference or at a party or on an elevator is the cliche thing. You're on an elevator and Steven Spielberg steps on with you and you've got 22 floors to tell him about your latest script. How do you take your 120-page masterpiece and describe it in less than a minute in a way that makes somebody want to read it? That's what that's about. And the biggest mistake people make, and one of the main reasons I wrote the book and started coaching people on that situation, is writers try and tell the entire story. And so somebody will say, well, what's your movie about? And they'll say, well, it opens in the rain and then the camera moves here. And that's not what the person wanted to know. They wanted to know very succinctly the things they would learn if they watched an ad for a movie on a television show that lasts 30 seconds. That's what they want to know. Who am I rooting for? What's the genre? What is that character pursuing? What's the big conflict? Is there a love story? Those sort of core issues. So it's how do you present those key elements in a way that still does justice to the story and leaves them wanting more, so that's what's going to make them agree to read it. As far as pitching an idea to other people before you write it, the reason I recommend you not do that is because I think it's possible to get opinions too soon in the process, and it could stifle your creativity. I mean, the thing you got to realize is 90% of all ideas, at least, are just crap. And sometimes great movies come out of those crappy ideas. But they come out because you think about an idea and you think, well, that's crap, but what if I changed this? And maybe if I did this? And you allow yourself to cogitate about it, to think about it, to brainstorm some more. Well, if you take the first idea, the first germ, and say to your friends, well, what do you think about this idea? And they say it's crap, then you feel like, oh yeah, and you're discouraged, and then you don't go further. So I compare it to a human has to stay a fetus for a certain amount of time before it can be out into the elements on its own. I think ideas are that way too. First, they have to be your own for a while, and you have to really get them to the point where you're fairly solid and your ego's not too caught up in it, and you're sure that this is the idea you want. And I think even take it to like treatment or if not a full script before you start getting feedback. I think you can be too influenced by people's opinions early in the process. What I find is the mistake more writers make is the opposite. It's like they never show it to anybody. They just start, they decide their script is great and they don't hire a consultant, or they don't show it to people in their writers group or their film class or their screenwriting class, or at least friends who know about movies. They just start sending it out, and that you need to get feedback. You can't trust your own judgment when it's finished. But I guess this is the good way to say it. You can't trust your own judgment when your script is done, but you can't trust other people's judgment before you begin. I mean, if you have a log line for a script that's finished and you want to get people to read it, and you're going to places like Script Shark or whatever those are, then that's a different story. But just throwing ideas out there and see what catches on doesn't sound good. And it's a little risky too, because you can't copyright an idea. And if it's the kind of idea that everybody's going to like, then one of those people might decide, I could write that. And you've got no way of protecting yourself, and you haven't written it yet either. But if you've got a copywritten script and it's already developed, it doesn't make much sense for another writer to steal it when they know yours is already out there.